Okay, so this was a large topic, and when we tried to break it down or and figure out how to present it. And because I'm such a history buff and really believe that people should remember the early ages of felt making, we start there and about making firm sculptures or firm felt. Next. So what we defined as a structured felt is, it can be done so many different ways, but one of them is to have very hard felt, and it's full to the extreme so that there is very little drape. And it can hold its own shape, it can stand on its own. There's also, you can also use coarse wool sheep and make it very fulled, and that will also be stiff and stand on its own. You can give it a skeleton or a stiffening agent, and that will help it hold its shape. And you can form around a resist so that the three-dimensional form itself, if it is firm enough, will stand on its own. Historically, felt making began in Central Asia. If you've been there, or you may already know this, that the traditional sheep in that region are coarse-wooled, and they are in the fat-tailed family. So, and coarse wools will usually make a very stiff felt. I was in Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyzstan, and these are some fat-tailed sheep from there. And notice when you can see such a defined lock structure and really definite points, that is probably a coarse wool. Next. This is from a sheep manual, but again, you look at you can see its tail back there, by the way, the fat tail. That's considered to be a delicacy in Central Asia. And they really love those sheep for that. This is caracol. And then they have a very defined, almost like a triangle coming down as for their fiber structure. Very little crimp. Next. So historically, these are the Pazyryk pieces, and they were found by several different Russian archaeologists. The most famous is Sergei Rudenko, and he wrote a book called The Frozen Tombs of Siberia. And these are found in you can see these in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, Russia. It's a huge museum, and they are definitely very firm felts, very well decorated and beautifully done. Next. This piece is huge, and people only usually see parts of it, but it is a repeating image of a queen or perhaps a goddess, they aren't sure what, with someone riding a horse coming to give her tributes. So you see that it repeats across there. And this picture is really good because it does show the scale of this. This was found down inside of a kurgan, the kurgans, which are the burial mounds, and it is meant to. It was around the walls of the kurgan. So it's a huge piece. Here's a detail. This is all felt. So very early on, you saw that was around 5th century before Christ, and then it was, I mean, incredible detail. Next.
Oh, wow.
So Laura, if you could turn your sound off, that would be really helpful. If you don't mind muting your, thank you, Laura. Okay, so now we come up to the 20th century, and we come to the same region of the world, or relatively close, you know, not that, you know, that was Siberia. This is both Kyrgyzia and Kazakhstan. So they are making very beautiful felt carpets, and these carpets are made of quite firm felt from coarse wool. One of the things I like to notice about the difference between Kyrgyz and Kazakh is that Kyrgyz is very bright colors and a simpler form in some ways. Kazakhs, I don't know if I show it very well there. They always have little curlicues on the ends of their forms. So it's a little bit more elaborate, and their colors are usually simpler. Go ahead. So when I was in Kyrgyzia, I was able to go to Kiziltir, which is the home of the Zapad Ismailov, who is a yurt maker. And this was just to show you the other thing that happens with the felts. They are firm enough that they can be used with a structure to stand upright. So that yurts have a structure, a wooden structure, that a lattice work and wooden poles on the top, and then the felts go around the edges of that and held on with beautiful felted textiles. Next. This is a ceremonial yurt from a Kyrgyz ceremonial yurt, and look at how beautiful it is made, and wonderful woven and spraying and all kinds of different techniques used to make the decoration. You can, if you're there, you can, people oftentimes don't live in yurts anymore, but they will rent a ceremonial one for a wedding or for a funeral or a christening, of that, things of that nature. So they can be rented often. This one was one that was actually a prize-winning yurt. Next. Now this is what the yurts were that I saw, and they were along the side of the road, and were with people selling fruit and flowers and, you know, just different things along the side of the road for the tourists to drive by. But much simpler type of yurt, but still that felt structure on the outside. Next. So now let's go into the three-dimensional forms, things that are made around a resist of some sort. These are were just found recently in the 2016. There was a burial site that was found that had these artifacts in it, and so these are women's felt boots, and they have leather soles. They were found in Mongolia, but they're Turkic. So these are people who eventually became the Turkish-speaking peoples of the world, which includes a lot of the Central Asian, have a Turkic-based language. Anyway, there's leather sole on the bottom, which I think is really interesting. And it's been buckled on, and it may be even sewn on a little bit, but she's also embroidered all over the front, all the top of her boots. Next. This is a 20th century version from the Turgut people, who are also Turkic people from Western Mongolia. So this is the same type of person, but you know, instead of, you know, a long time ago, this is now, or relatively soon. And notice that those leather soles lace on. They can be put on and taken off. So felt doesn't wear as well as leather. But one thing about felt is that you don't have to kill your animal to get it, where you do have to kill it to get the leather. So the leather soles could be moved easily from one set of boots to another. Next. Then there was a find in a Urumqi, which is a part of Western China, what used to be called Outer Mongolia. It's just south of regular Mongolia. And this is a toddler, and look at his hat. The cap itself is a blue cashmere felt, and it's lined with red wool felt. Next. And now these are, again, not totally near, but that cap style is still being used in the 20th century. These are a felt shepherd's hat from Bhutan, and it's made with points that come off of it. So it's made from yak felt, and with points that come off of it so that it can, water will shed off of it in the rain. Next. These hats were found in Urumqi, a different style, much more like, almost like a cone. And again, three-dimensional, oftentimes decorated with yarns and feathers. 1000 BC. Next. And I love this pazarik piece, which is a man's felt hat, like a helmet with a side. I mean, that could be a hat worn today very easily. Next. So there was a felt revival in the 70s, 1970s, and through the 90s. And people started making large felt pieces. And they made them with a stiffer wool, and they were made very rigid for wall pieces and or for floor pieces. They also started adding rigidity by adding armature or stiffening. And many people also began doing sculptural felts with three-dimensional forms around to resist. Next. So this is the work of Linda Lowe Oren. I can't read my thing. I think it's 1987. And it's called Genesis, and it's a series on the Bible, and these pieces are in a church. Next. Linda Lowe Oren did actually get a grant to go to Central Asia and study felt making with people there. And so her felts are very stiff and beautifully pictorial, kind of, reminiscent, going back to the Pazarique pieces. Next. Lane Goldsmith was another person working in that same idea of big flat pieces, very stiff. The one on the left is in a school in Washington State, and it's called There Now from '92. And then below, getting a little form, like she had a metal structure, I believe, underneath. It's called Blackout, and it's from 1986, Lane Goldsmith. Yes, go. Joan Livingstone, one of my favorite felters, and her work, I wish I had the photos of the first work I saw of hers, but I can't find those. But she was really interested in felt as a skin, and making these large sheets of very firm felt, and then building in holes with resist, so like tubes, so that she could put in metal armature and let it hang there as if it was a skin. She also had skins hanging off of meat hooks, that felt skins hanging off of meat hooks as a way of getting them sculptural. Eventually, she started putting resin with her felt, and you see the work from 1990 on the right there. So she stiffened it with resin in order to maintain the look of the drape, but have it be rigid. Next. And another one of my favorite felters from the 80s, Dina Barzell. She was also a tapestry weaver, and she would oftentimes combine felt and tapestry together. And this is actually quite large. It's probably, the red part is probably about a meter across. And it's called Carried by Black Butterflies. Next. And I believe this is, you're going to be doing this now, Nancy?
Yes. And I think I'm going to slide out of this for just a second to let some people in from out of the waiting room. So we'll return to the slideshow in just a second.
Okay.
Oh, as soon as I find the waiting room. Let me do this. Let me stop sharing for a minute. Okay. Just waiting for folks to. All right, for those that just joined us, we've been doing our slideshow, and I apologize, I can't let people in from the waiting room while I've got my screen sharing for the slideshow. So we've just covered the history, and we're just going to go through some current slides here. And so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And if folks would mute their sound just for a little bit, If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll get to those when we finish the slideshow. So we're going to just review some of the contemporary felts at this point in time and kind of show how felt making has evolved, but that we still come from those traditional roots in the felt making we're doing today. So first we're going to look at some flat felt. So this is a class that Flora Felts puts on. And this is looking at making using pre-felts and reflections so that you've got the same piece with different opposites in your two pieces. You can see that. And this is done with a pre-felt and then an opposites layout, and is also done in merino. This particular one is done in one of the rougher or higher micron wools that are used, and it's a modern pillow that was it's much more durable. The merino ones have the shape, but they tend not to be as durable. So this would be one that you could see on a chair cushion or something like that. And then we're going to look at some 3D done with resists. And this is one of Maris Cavanagh's bottles. So this is a 3-dimensional bottle that actually has a removable bottle stopper on the top of it. And then Pam MacGregor, some of you are familiar probably with her work. And this is one of her teapots called Carnival. And this is out of Finnish wool, and she's got a hand-dyed monofilament, as well as this also has a removable stopper in it. This one, the last teapot was done with the resist. This one actually has a metal strainer within it, so it's more of a supported structure. And this is called Nesting Dreams. So this is done out of Finnish wool, so much sturdier, rougher wool. It's got horse fiber. As I said, it's got a strainer in it. A lot of hand stitching. She also has some merino wool, and she's upcycled the stand for this particular item. And then we have 3D hats with the resist. So this hat is actually a hat within a hat. So it's a double walled, and you can somewhat see within the bottom holes that there's another structure within. This was done by Flora Carlile-Kovacs, and it's double walled. So she did each layer in, or each wall in 2 layers of merino. And it wasn't strong enough with just 2 layers to actually stand on its own. So she used a stiffening millinery starch that she applied to it, and it's hard as a rock now, the outside of this, so it's no problem when it's standing alone. Where in this one, this is a laminated, so it's got a fabric as well as the wool. It's 4 layers of wool, and with the 4 layers of merino, this is sturdy enough to stand on its own without adding any kind of other stiffener or starch product to it. This is also made of merino and 4 layers, and it has a fairly complex, almost a book shape resist in it to get the angles for this particular hat. And then we have more of a modern wear it for the winter hat that is also done out of merino and 4 layers. Then we are going to move on to 3D felt structures that have been done using a needled felted pre-felt. So this is one of Kristy Kuhn's flowers, and she has a variety of flowers that she does out of sheets of pre-felt, and has a process to combine those into the petals of the flower. This also has a millinery stiffener on it to hold it in place. And then some of her more recent work again, where she's using, you can see the individual sheets of pre-felt that have been worked into a very hard, firm felt that she also then adds the millinery stiffener to. And this was a partnership with Burchard, who is a woodworker. And these are madrone shells that are combined with her felt work. And here's another one of those. And these needle felted pre-felts also have a piece of silk within them. So you can see the black line on these is actually a piece of silk that is laminated between the two layers of needle felted pre-felts. And then we have some supported structure items. And these were done with sponges that were cut into shape and then felted around them. And so here we have one of Flora's family of cats and one of our multicolored cats for those cat lovers out there. And then a caterpillar. One of the things that we went looking for in preparing this was really trying to find a resource of what wools are good for felting and some information that might help people to figure out what type of felting it might be best for. So this is a chart that Pat Spark has put together and can be obtained on her webpage. And Pat, can you remind them the name of your webpage?
Sparkfiberarts.com.
Great, thank
Remember,
you.
I don't have an S on my end of my name, so it's just sparkfiberarts.com.
Great.
Fiber spelled the American way.
Thank you.
And then you can see where this shows you the breeds, the Bradford count, which is generally used in spinning, and tells you how much wool can actually be spun from this. And then the micron count, which should help you in looking at what types of projects might be done. Well, it's available on the website. Oh, I know what I was going to say. This really isn't a comprehensive list, but it is a list that is some of the more commonly used and easily found around the area here in the Pacific Northwest. So there will be some on there that obviously won't be included, but it would be easy to add to this format. So that's our presentation. We're going to open it for question and answer, and we can talk a little bit more about what the future might look like as we get to the end of the session. All right, let me stop sharing. And let's see, are there any questions out there? Let's see what's in the chat window. I see people were a little upset about not being able to get in, and I apologize. Flora's not with us today, and I wasn't able to figure out how to get you out of the waiting room in the middle of the slideshow.
So we have a question on where can these recordings be seen, and they are available on, you can link to them from our Pacific Northwest Felt Makers Group Facebook page. That's PNW Felt Makers Group on Facebook. And there's a link there to a YouTube channel that we now have for our videos that we've got.
Here's somebody asking about, do you do stitching on the felt?
Traditionally, Mongolian felts are oftentimes stitched in order to make them firmer. I'm just talking traditionally. I think that a lot of people stitch on felts. I'm currently working with Anne Konen from the Netherlands to do a stitched Kyrgyz piece. It's going to be a yurt bag. And so yeah, that's all stitched, and then it's quilted, and then it's stitched again to close it up, and it's got a special woven edge on it and a special cord. So yeah, so stitching is, I mean, obviously it's a wonderful base fabric. You can stitch on it.
So we have a question here. What are the best sources for wool other than merino in Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, you know, that is a good question because we haven't, because of the pandemic, we have not had our Black Sheep Gathering nor our Oregon Flock and Fiber Festival or the other wonderful festivals that are available to us. I don't think there's been a festival even inside of the United States. So, I have always been friends with the local extension agent in the United States, and I go whenever I travel, and I used to have to get fleece in different places. I would go to the local extension agent, call them up and say, who is selling fleece in the area, or who has fleece available in the area, and they will know all the sheep growers, and so they will be able to tell you. You have to know what kind of fleece you want. What is an extension agent? It is a branch of the United States federal government. So it's not going to help you, I know, in other countries, but it's a branch of our government that works with local people and knows the agricultural aspects of, it's part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They also have something called 4-H for kids to teach kids about lots of different things.
And certainly the organizations that provide merino, many of them sell other types
Yes.
of wool as well. I know Paradise Fiber does, Fox Glove Fibers does. So those are all places.
World of Wool sells a lot of different kinds of wools.
Right, you can find online and can order.
It is helpful to know if you want, you know, we kind of alluded to a couple different ways you can get stiffness, or several different ways you can get stiffness. But one of the ways that you can get stiffness is by using a finer wool and using more layers of it, and then fulling it like crazy, you know, just really fulling it hard. And another way, pardon?
I was just going to say, and somebody has a question here about stretching as part of fulling, and is that helpful for making it firm?
Stretching makes it better felt. I'm not sure if it makes it firmer because I do it on my really fine pieces that I don't want to be, I want them to be really flexible, so that I'm stretching all the time I'm working with them. But I haven't actually tried stretching on coarser wools, and I'm not sure if it could be done. I mean, they're so stiff, you know, they're like, I mean, I didn't want any movement in it, so I didn't have that. I don't know the answer to that question, I guess, because it's not in my experience. But I was going to talk about the other thing is that yeah, so coarser wools. So, you know, if you want super stiff, so stiff that you can't even form a sculpture from it, it's just rigid, and then you want to go probably with a coarser wool, like the caracal. I mean, caracol's great. Like if you want a rug that doesn't curl up on the floor when you walk on it, you know, you want something stiff. But if you want something sculptural, then you're probably going to go with one of the medium or even medium fine wools like Finn or Burchard. You know, they're not very coarse, but they hold their form super well. And you can use steam and mold them and get them to stay in that shape much better than you can with a super coarse wool. The super coarse wools are not necessarily easy to do that with. You're not going to get that nice pleating on the side of something with a super coarse wool. In my experience, that would be very difficult. There was a question about stiffening, and I don't know the answer to that.
Which question?
Milner stiffening.
Oh, it comes in a crystal form, and you mix it to the thickness that you want it to be. And you can apply it with a brush, you can apply it by spraying. So if you want something that's fairly rigid, but not hard as a rock, you vary the amount of water that you're putting in to mix it. There aren't real clear directions. Something other than a hat. So you kind of have to try it on a piece, just to do a sample.
No, I'm listening to a
It would be good if you,
Okay.
webinar.
Excuse me, we need to have everybody but
It comes from the
muted.
States, so it's 10 o'clock in the morning in the States.
Can you please mute? Oh, I'm sorry.
we went outside. We're good. We're good.
Okay, all right.
Anyway,
all right.
so some of it is just experimentation with the felt that you want to stiffen to get it to exactly the stiffness that you want. And that's really just because you're mixing it with warm water. So how much you dilute it or not.
There's like a FAQ on my website. I used to have a newsletter called the North American Felters Network. And I also had a felting group that we had an email felting group, and I would compile answers to questions like this. And there's a whole, I was just looking at it last night. There's a whole section of the FAQ on the North American Felters Network FAQ on stiffening and what work you're working at, because people tried all different kinds of things, you know, watered down acrylic, acrylic medium. They tried a traditional one that some hatters used to use, which is rabbit skin glue. And then people will talk about how that when the rain falls on the hat, then the glue dissolves. And this happened to my daughter. We tried it with my hat my daughter made, and she got glue all down her face and burning her eyes, and you know, it was awful. But the traditional hatters in some countries use rabbit skin glue. So somebody was talking about that word, I don't know how to say, pavarolo. Someone asked that question. Pavaro. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
No.
Yeah, and people are using that. I have not used it.
Yeah, a couple of people have commented it in the chat.
Pavapole. Okay. I don't have that experience.
I don't either.
If somebody has a lot of experience with that and really likes it, uses it a lot, can they please unmute themselves and tell us about it? Okay,
Right.
Nancy.
So let's move on to another question then. So here's a question here of, is there a way to make a hard fabric felt without further shrinking a piece? I don't know how, I mean, it's going to.
I don't think so.
No.
If you want to, if you've already laid out the wool of a certain weight and a certain dimension, and you want it harder, it's probably going to shrink some. You can work more. If you don't want it shrinking in all ways, don't throw it. You know, you're still going to be fulling. Keep it flat. Possibly roll it. You get some shrinkage these directions though. You want to work with as many flat techniques as possible that don't involve compression and hitting hard in places that will make it grab and pull in really, really badly. So I don't know, if I had a piece that was already exactly the right size and I didn't want it to shrink anymore, but I wanted it to be harder, I guess I would lay it out flat on my table and work it with my hands, with a glove on my hands, so that it doesn't get hairy. You don't want it to get hairy. And I would just work it flat and try not to have, you know, just keep pushing downward on it, trying to get it. It would take a long time, you know. It's better to
resort to a stiffener agent rather than continuing to work the felt. It would be another.
You wouldn't get, if you're trying to get a stiffer felt for a garment or something. I guess that's what I was thinking, that someone's got too soft of a fabric and they're trying to make it stiffer. I mean, yeah, you could put some kind of stiffening agent on even a really soft felt, and it will hold its form.
And understand what you use and how much of it you use could vary.
Right, yeah, so that's gonna be, yeah, right. And I've seen people do that. You know, it's a relatively soft felt. Who's asking the?
That's
Yeah.
Bobby. Hi.
Bobby.
You know, what you said, working with your hand
Yeah,
and don't roll it, just
right,
try to get it to felt down.
right.
Know what I mean? How you were describing it. That can work. Yeah.
So you want what you're trying to do is get a little bit more horizontal and compression, you know. So you don't want to roll it. You definitely don't want to throw it. Yeah, that's, if you're going for something that's still a piece of fabric at the end. Anything else? So I wish somebody would tell us about how to use that. I have a container of that Power stuff, and it didn't come with instructions, and I have no idea how to use it. Has anyone used it?
This is Sarah. I haven't used it because I might have found instructions online, and I read this caution about pouring it down your pipes that really frightened me. So
yeah.
I haven't tried it because of that. And I thought, well, if it's dangerous to pour it down your pipes, then isn't it also dangerous to just put it in your yard? And I've asked that question on various Facebook pages. People said that they haven't had any problems with it in their pipes, but that just made me nervous.
Yeah, because did they say what was the reason why it was difficult?
I know. I assume that there's a risk of it because it really does harden rock hard. That maybe if it doesn't get flushed all the way through or something, maybe it builds up.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. If there's somebody who's that, I'd love to hear because I've been too afraid to use it.
If you have a septic system, that would not be good for it. I wonder if you could pour it off into cardboard, maybe plastic lined cardboard, and just let it all harden, and then it could go to the landfill, which is another bad thing in the landfill. But
yeah, but that's a good idea.
I've used it. I've used it on a small. I made a Singer sewing machine out of felt, so I made flat pieces of felt and then tailored it, and I painted it. I painted the Pavapol on the inside of the felt, and then added a seam to sew it up, and it supports itself. It is rock hard, but I don't know. I was the one that asked the question about large outdoor sculptures in Yorkshire. I don't know whether it's waterproof. I haven't soaked my sewing machine to see if it fell apart.
Well,
so
winter is coming in our hemisphere, right? Winter is coming. Take a piece of felt, paint that puppy, put it outside somewhere, and just let it hang there and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then let us know the answer.
Really show you what happens in the rain and everything else.
It would be quite an expensive way of doing it for a large piece of felt, though. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
No, but I meant for your study to see if it's even possible.
Yeah.
With you. A little bit of an experiment. And this is just pair the different fabric up.
I think, that we had a very short period of time this morning, in an hour, to cover this topic. And I think Pat and I really discovered how much more there could be. We could be doing a full session just on the different ways of
one thing. Yeah.
Or
on the different wools for a carpet, or the different, there's so many things that we could talk about there.
So with that being said, Pat and Flora and I have talked about maybe continuing these sessions on a monthly basis. We're very interested in hearing what kinds of topics you folks would be interested in. So maybe before you leave today, if you can leave your ideas for topics in the chat window, that would give us an opportunity to think about what might be of interest to us.
There was a question about emailing topics to Flora, and that would also work.
Sure, or you could go to our Facebook page or our website, either of those, and leave
Right.
comments there as well.
Right?
We check
Yeah,
them
that'd be
on a
great.
regular basis. We are going to do one in November, which will be on November
Yeah, we know it.
16th, which is
Oh,
a
well, we're not.
Monday.
I wasn't going to cook supper.
No, we're
I
not.
can't
No,
remember.
okay.
Do you want soup? There's soup or cheese and bits, or
Yeah, I'll have soup and cheese and bits.
there's some. The rest of the minestrone in there, and there's some tomato.
Nancy, you can mute it. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did. I just thought.
Okay. Okay. So, can
So
you
anyway,
just say-
November 16th will be our first of the monthly sessions, and that is a Monday morning. We're going to do the 10 a.m. time again. Hopefully that works for folks, but if you have preferences on that, feel free to leave those for us in the comments too.
And we moved it to Monday because I'm selfish, and Fridays when I can sometimes see my grandchildren more easily than Mondays. So if there's a possibility of grandchildren time, I don't want to miss it. So,
All right. Any other questions or anything else anybody wants to?
Carmen, you had your hand?
Would you please repeat the date?
November 16th, it's Monday.
And same registration procedures?
No,
No.
we'll have to do registration. We'll send out probably a Facebook post and an email to our mailing list. And the Portland Textile Month is supposed to give us all of your contact information. So hopefully we'll have it by then so that we can just email you a notice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If not, I'm going to throw one more screen thing up here for you. Flora's not with us, so we thought we could promote her while she's gone. So Flora is actually offering a, let's see if I can get this right, a class on making pre-felts, felting with pre-felts. And so here is some information on doing Central Asian type of pre-felts for,
Her email address is there. So
which is
those
just,
of you who are wanting to send ideas also could go to that email address, as well as getting more information about this felting with pre-felts.
all right. And if there aren't any more questions.
There was a question about the term lamination
Oh,
and what that means. And as one of the early people who started using that word, it was the word that we used in the late 80s and early 90s for attaching, actually even earlier than early 80s, and for attaching fabric to fiber. The idea being that you have layers of different materials that go together, which is what lamination is. And then when you do that, you get a new material, which is what the felt would be. So, and then in 93 or so, polystyrene developed the word nuno. And some of us stayed with lamination, and many people went to the word nuno. So that is, that's the history of the term lamination versus nuno. And there are some places in the world where they, and I don't understand what it is, but they call a certain type of felting lamination that is, and they differentiate that from nuno. But that's not my experience with it.
well, and wasn't Nuno initially done with just silk?
No, it was done with cotton.
Oh, okay. Piece of the history some of us don't know.
Sheer cotton, oh gosh.
Gauze.
Yeah, maybe it was a cotton gauze. It had
Yeah.
a different, there's another name. There's another name for it.
Mm.
Very thin. It's what those Indian skirts were made out of, really thin, ethereal, fine cotton. I can't remember the name. Not muslin. Muslin, and muslin's an interesting word because it means something totally different in every English-speaking country that I've ever been to. It's a totally different fabric in every country. Not scrim. People are sending in names. Voile, cotton voile. Cotton voile. Anyway, yeah, that's what she was using early on. You know, because Polly lived in a warm, really warm climate. I think she still does, but she was trying to look for things that she could do with felt that had very little wool, and it was just very, very open, and the air passed through it nicely and so forth.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this adventure here. This is the first time Portland Textile Month has gone with any virtual sessions, and the majority of them were virtual. So it was a great learning process for all of us, and we really appreciate your taking this journey with us. And we hope that we'll see you in the future. Thank you for joining.
If there are any other questions, are we just going to say bye-bye?
Bye. Oh, wait a minute. Carmen's got a question, but she's muted.
Oh, wait, Carmen has a question.
It's probably, I don't know if this is the place to ask, but I'm in the process of felting a journal with some students. They're quite young. They're grade threes. And my question is the compressing gently at first the most important stage of felting for them? Should I compress gently, slowly for quite a while so everything gets
yeah, if you're working with what age are grade 3 kids? Are they like 8 years old, 9 years old?
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
Okay. They are very clever at that age with their hands.
Yeah.
You know, very clever. So you don't want them to get, with anything, you don't ever want to have, especially children, get too rough too soon. They're very good with their hands, but they don't quite understand pressure and how to back off on pressure and put on pressure.
Yeah.
And I have them do things like, I'll have them say, am I holding pressure? Is that muscle really, can you tell that I'm really working?
Yeah.
Or is, you know, what now, you know?
Yeah.
Because when you want to learn a craft like felting, you do want to, in my opinion, it's very helpful to watch people make felt.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I've been in places in countries watching traditional people make felt that we had no language in common, you know, no language in common whatsoever. And we could only learn from each other's hands and watching what was going on. So if you can teach the difference between hard pressure and soft pressure,
Okay.
you're giving them a skill that they can have later in life for other things.
Yes.
You know, so having, and I use words like pat it like a bird, just pat it.
Yeah.
You know, this is something soft. It's a little soft creature, and you're just being gentle with it. And then we can get more rough. We can be mean with it. You know,
Yeah.
then we change the kind of what it is. You know, okay, so now you can go like you're really scrubbing on something. You've got, you know, I don't know, make up something.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very helpful to use the imagery for. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Pat, yeah. I taught kids for lots and lots of years. So 18 years of teaching kids.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer.
Oh, you're welcome.
Carol, I see you had a question about joining the Pacific Northwest Felt Makers Group. Flora and I have been having conversations about starting a broader group than the Pacific Northwest Felt Makers, which has been a small group of people who have a professional background in felt making. And so I don't know if it'll be through that group or a separate group that we will start looking at putting together a Pacific Northwest group. And we'll be getting back to all of you if you're interested in participating in that, probably in the next month or so.
Yeah, it was, we kind of grew out of some of us who just would meet and have little felting retreats and shared information. And all of us